Another week down, another week here with the Draft Sickos here on the No Ceilings NBA YouTube channel and podcast feed. We have a loaded slate to talk about today, fresh off the heels of a big Saturday and a little bit of a good Sunday slate too. Jam, how we feeling, brother?
Feeling excellent, like you mentioned, a great weekend of hoops. It's Victory Sunday right now. We'll be Victory Monday for our people that listen to this for both our teams, the 49ers and Rams. So it's been a fantastic weekend. It's about to get even better talking some hoops with you.
All right, let's rock. We are live here on the No Ceilings NBA YouTube channel and podcast feed. We are also on your podcast player of choice. I'm Stephen Gillaspie, joined by my co-host Jam Boozer Hines. And Jam, we have a fun slate lined up for the show today. Real quick, I want to ask you, because we're both a little bit wrestling fans here. Did you
Yeah.
watch Saturday Night Main Event?
I did, and that in conjunction with watching AEW Collision early in the day, so it was a great night of graps as well too. Yeah, I mean, he did what's best for business. I get it. You tapped out. It's like tough. The whole thing is never give up, and then like at the at the end, he gives up. So it's kind of a message that sends. But I totally understand when to go out on the sword. I didn't have such a huge problem with him tapping out, though I wanted to do a little bit different. But the little smile at the end, I just didn't like that. But everything else I thought was pretty good. You got Obafemi getting his due, and him and Cody squaring off what was a really, really fun match to start. Wish it didn't kind of go to the DQ, but I get
Yeah,
it.
that sucked.
Yeah, we can get on to the booking and everything like that. But tag match was awesome. AJ and Leon saving the botch. Like that was just incredible. You gotta love that when things don't go right. You just keep it moving. But yeah, I thought I really enjoyed it for the most part. I wish I could have gone. Like it's right here in DC for me, but
Yep.
tickets were outrageous, of course. So I enjoyed it from the comforts of my home. What about you? Did you enjoy the show?
I was right there with you, man. There were some things that I liked, some things that I didn't. I think if you're gonna have John Cena go out that way, like maybe just have him hold on and you do the 3 count and he just doesn't raise the arm up. Maybe that's the way that you go if you want Gunther to choke him out.
Yeah.
I hated Obafemi getting DQ'd, but with Drew McIntyre and then him and Cody Rhodes just like holding hands afterwards. And I did like the Sol Ruka and Bailey match. That was pretty entertaining, I would
Yeah,
say.
so good. Yeah, that was a really good match too.
Soul's good. Yeah, and then the tag match, as you mentioned, the Joe Hendry appearance when they had the Miz on the show too, that was pretty fun. But all right, I'm sure we're for those who are not wrestling enthusiasts, we might have lost some people, but it's okay. We're human and we have other interests outside of basketball. But Jam, let's divert. Let's get back into the reason why we're here today, talking about some hoops, man. And this is a fun slate of prospects, just kind of going over who sort of won the week, so to speak. And those who are new listening, the way that Jam and I typically do this is we'll open the show with two kind of more headliner prospects, one sort of intermediate, and then we'll close with a couple of sicko prospects towards the end. We have a fun couple of sicko prospects for the show, I would say. But Jam, we're going to open the show with a guy who, if we're being honest, I would say didn't start the season getting discussed like he was really going to be a top 3 pick. I felt like it was just kind of like an obligatory potential top 3 pick, but no one really discussed him that way. When I say no one, I mean the royal no one. Of course, there are people here and there who were giving him his credit. But by and large, consensusly speaking, AJ Dybantsa was not really discussed as a player who has a real shot of being drafted number one. And I would even say here within the No Ceilings community as well. Like we really loved Darren Peterson coming in. We had a bunch of Cam Boozer enthusiasts. He actually opened our big board being our number one prospect. And then it was like, oh yeah, and AJ's top 3 prospect, really, really good. He played against Clemson and UC Riverside this week, jamming over those 2 games. He averaged 27 points, almost 9 rebounds, almost 7 assists, 2.5 steals, a half a block with shooting splits of 59 33 and 68. Jam, with that being said, what do you make of the do we call it an emergence? Do we call it a recovery? Like, what do you want to call this little this stint of AJ Dybantsa's early playing days in college?
Probably a little resurgence of maybe some of the stock here. And like for me, I know that as you mentioned, some of those ceilings, just some of the draft space in general kind of gave him. I'm not sure if it's scouting fatigue with him or what type of fatigue we want to label it with him always being considered for that first pick for so long, the past few years and everything. But for me, like that number one pick has always been completely open between mostly those guys at the top, with AJ, Boozer, and Peterson as well. And just as we continuously see with AJ, just that combination of the ridiculous tools and the evolving skill set, it's it's all number one pick worthy. And I think that he really showed that, like, really in pretty much in a complete display this week. The multiple level scoring package was on display as we always really see with him. It's that mix of the size, the handle, the length, the ridiculous explosive athleticism, the physicality, the footwork, just all that stuff that he has, the tools and the shot making ability. And there was nothing really Clemson could do about it once he got going. And of course, you see Riverside, with him, we saw the athleticism I love from him. He kind of put the game away with that monster dunk in the lane, one hand. There was three Clemson players in traffic there. He just slams it on them there. And we just see that time and time again. He had a stutter rip today against UC Riverside for another nasty dunk.
Yep.
The balance, the pull-up game that he showed against Clemson, the fallaways in the post. And all that scoring stuff is fine and dandy. I think that's what we kind of expect from him. But for me, and as we started to really see in those games, and I know a lot of people know since feel the same way, is just the continued emergence of that playmaking, both as a playmaker for others on the offensive end and the defensive playmaking that we saw a little bit more in the UC Riverside game. Did you see that kind of emergence with him, with those two aspects of the game? Because really, for me, I think that's what I've been looking for all year. The score is going to be what it is. Like I think that has the potential to be the best scoring package in the entire draft class, but it's those ancillary skills with his playmaking and his defense that not only has the opportunity to raise the floor, but the ceiling for him.
Yeah, I certainly did. And for those who aren't aware, on Saturday evenings, for the most part, we're doing what we call the night shift, where after like the big headliner game, some of us at No Ceilings will go live. We'll recap the slate of games on Saturday. We'll talk about some of the other games that happened throughout the week. Jam, I talked about AJ Dybantsa and his performance that I watched against Clemson and went back and saw a little bit of what he did against Riverside on the back end. But I spoke about how it's funny how AJ in both of those games approached 30 points scoring while also putting up 8 and 7 assists in each of those games respectively. And I think and one thing that I mentioned in that show, Jam, that I want to kind of get your opinion on is that I think for these guys who are dynamo scorers in high school, who are the sole kind of source of life, so to speak, within their offensive philosophy and game planning, I think the hardest part for those types of players is to come in and really kind of give more on the facilitation side of the house, right? Because so much has been asked for him on the scoring front for so long that now all of a sudden we have to come in here against higher levels of competition on a more consistent basis. And now you want me to give up the ball more while I'm kind of like a scoring type of a player. But we've seen with AJ is that as he's moving the ball along, it's finding its way back to him so he can kind of do both things at the same time, right? And we've seen that over this past week, this surge that he's giving now, some actual life to the conversation now of it is a three-headed monster at the top of the draft now with AJ playing this way, and he's scoring and playmaking effectively. And it's even like the playmaking numbers aren't truly indicative of what he's doing out there on the court because his
Yeah.
vision has always kind of been there, right? But him actually utilizing his gifts, the pressure and gravity that he can have depending on where he's on the floor. He's creating openings for teammates, and they haven't even really been hitting at like an earth shattering pace or anything right now. So, Jam, again, I'll reframe this for you. What do you make of the fact that he's a scorer in high school, going to college against deeper levels of competition, and he's starting to figure out if I move the ball is going to find its way back to me?
Absolutely love it. And this is not the first time we've seen this from him. I feel like it's been sprinkled in so far throughout the collegiate season. And then when we go back to the grassroots tape, the FIBA tape, both the playmaking and defensive stuff, that stuff was there. It's just about making sure that continues to progress, as you mentioned, continue to find that consistency. And that's just kind of what the battle is for any type of offensive engine, especially, wings. When you have so much gravity as a scorer, especially with that type of size, you don't need to be like this incredible playmaker. Like, that's fine, but you have to be like a at least an adequate, maybe borderline like plus playmaker, but you need to be able to make the proper reads, to be able to trust your teammates, to be able to work off your own gravity. And I kind of equate a little bit. There's lots of different names that you can kind of go with this, but just like Jason Tatum, we've seen
Mm.
his continued progression as a playmaker. Is he going to be a guy that is going to be confused for a point guard or a point forward out there? No, but there's so many games where Tatum has, 6, 7 assists. We've seen those career, just really playing the complete game, making the right read out of pick and rolls. And that's just a natural progression. I think we're going to continuously see that from AJ. And, late in that game against Clemson, in that comeback, he throws two just on the money pick and roll lobs to Keto. You can really just throw it up there anywhere for him. But he went up to the square and he slams them in. But he has to have the trust in Keto to get that there. And then, the precision, the accuracy to do that. So I just love seeing that from him. There was another possession in that Clemson game where he pushes it up the floor. Then he backs it out. It was late in the game, and I just love to see that he wasn't rushing. Then it ends up, in them scoring. Him a basic drive and kick, and that's just essentially with him driving, getting two, and then kicking it back out. So I like to see that type of progression, the floor game, along with the playmaking as well.
So the playmaking is there. We've seen the scoring uptick a little bit. And if I could kind of, again, I want to mention this point and then I'm going to kind of counteract myself, so to speak, here. If I could ding him on anything, it's that in the UC Riverside game, only one 3-point attempt and he missed it. And I believe he was poor from the free throw line. I think he was either 1 of 3 or 1 of 4, something along those lines. And then if you look in the Clemson game, he was 1 of 2, but still low 3-point volume. I think the shooting from outside is really going to be what is going to kind of swing his skill set, but it feels like he does so much on the court that you're going to be patient with the 3-point shot and allow that to continue to progress. And one thing that I've done in my own research is that if you feel like a guy is good enough to be taken number 1 in the NBA, you take him. And then naturally, by like that year 3, 4 point, you'll see that no matter what team they're on, like look at Cade Cunningham, even though he was a dynamo 3-point shooter in college, he goes to the pros. He's kind of a subpar shooter. And then lo and behold, that year 4, 5 season, he's starting to become respectable on decent volume from deep in the NBA. You can kind of get there with AJ. And the great thing about him is that he's got great positional size as well. So the pressure that he can put on the rim, the playmaking and all of that, that's great. So I want to talk to you about the defense quickly, and then we'll kind of shift to a more like holistic draft conversation with AJ. There's been a lot of conversation about how good of a defender he is in comparison to what we thought how he was going to look this season, how great of a defender he could be coming into the year. Jam, he's got a steal percentage of 2.1, a block percentage of 1.9. If you look at the stocks versus fouls committed category, which I love to look at, 14 stocks to 11 fouls committed. These numbers are not terrible for a guy who is being discussed as a defensive sieve if he's not kind of fronting the ball handler. immediately. What do you think of what the defense looks like now? Is this kind of like what you expected it to look like this early?
It's been mixed to say the least. I would say that I expected as far as just the up and down nature of it. Off the ball has not been great, getting
Right.
lost ball watching and things like that that I think are easy cleanups. It's not, a physical issue. It's more of a mental, a lock-in type of thing, which I think are much more correctable than a physical type of situation, where you simply just don't have the tools to make up for, to compensate for it. So I think the off-ball stuff certainly has to clean up. And I was very surprised that just the stock numbers are just so low considering the tools, that he has, just 1.1 stocks per game, and that's just shocking. It's disappointing. Even if he was going to have these lapses defensively, which every prospect has, every player has superstar NBA
Mhm.
level. It's the nature of basketball. That's just what happens, But I thought there'd be more of that defensive playmaking, similar to Nate Amon. I just thought there'd be more defensive playmaking to lean into, even if the just the overall defense and kind of like the soundness and the consistency with the defense wasn't always there. I thought you could always can lean on the defensive playmaking to an extent, and that just hasn't happened. When we see with UC Riverside, yes, I know it's UC Riverside, but at least we get a little bit of a glimpse of that, and they continue to move in the right direction. He had a steal as they were in the press against UC Riverside early. He also had a dig into a strip. Granted, like the offensive player kind of just dribbled right into him, but that he still had to make the play that got out and he finished the lob. Probably two of my favorite plays in that game. The first was an on-ball strip where he slides his feet, does a really good job, plays the spin move well, gets the strip, and he pushes it in transition, and then he eventually gets a long step back too, which was the three, but the foot's on the line. And then another one, he does a good job of navigating and giving effort and closing out on the ghost screen, slides the feet, shows some good ground coverage, and gets the on-ball block. So I want to continue to see more stuff like that with the effort and just the defensive event creation, and all that stuff is there. I think we will continuously see that from him as the season progresses.
I agree. And again, going back to that UC Riverside game, he recorded 5 steals and a block in that game, made up a lot of his stock numbers just in that one game. So if you take
Yeah.
out that UC Riverside game, the stock numbers are a lot more concerning compared to the fouls committed. So Jam, let's get into the holistic draft conversation now. And maybe a little bit of philosophy could be an archetype discussion. We'll just see which way your answer kind of takes it here. Do you think that AJ's play style lends itself to more obvious and apparent and consistent criticism as opposed to the way that like Darren Peterson and Cam Boozer plays?
It's a good question. I don't necessarily think so. I think they're all pretty criticized offensively with fairly different play styles, with AJ's and Darren's being the closer play styles. But I think just because of the expectation for him, when you see all those tools, like I would say clear NBA athlete, not just NBA athlete, an elite NBA athlete
Yep.
with some advanced shot creation, and you see like he's just a pup in all these tools. So I think just when you see that upside, and I think that's coupled with the fact that, as you mentioned, the 3-point number, the volume has been a little bit low. There's some criticism. Oh, you should take more threes. But my thing is, like, when you're that talented and he's able to get to pretty much where he wants to on the floor in the collegiate level, go to your spots, get to your spots, get to your
The
pull up.
Jason Tatum argument when he was a Duke, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Get to your spots. Go ahead and score, overpower people when you can, show that footwork, the shot making, just out athlete guys, when you need to. And, there's no reason to go away from what's been working. And he is, 2.4 3-point attempts per game, I believe. I want to see more of that. We all want to see more volume, but if it was something, a situation where he's shooting similar volume and he's shooting like 25%, then I'll be a little bit more worried. But he's still shooting at a good percentage despite the fairly low shoot 3-point volume.
Now, let me ask you this. In relation to the other two prospects where we have Darren Peterson, who is looks like he's going to be missing even more time again. He looks like he re-aggravated that
Sucks.
hamstring.
Yeah.
It absolutely sucks. You hate to see it because there's going to be inherent uh, kind of red flags from the draft community without really any knowledge of what's going on. So you're going to have to kind of circumvent that sort of conversation.
Yeah.
And then, there's just so much that goes on with like the injury aspect. And when you're kind of out of sight, you can be out of mind in a lot of ways. Cam Boozer is playing in a manner that's really not likely going to be his role in the NBA. There's a lot of things that he does I would say outside of like the scoring aspect of his game that will translate like immediately and will be a part of his role. But there's the whole dichotomy of him being the heliocentric kind of everything flows through me offensive star right now at Duke with a team that, thank goodness that they have him to lean onto. But how does his role translate? What does AJ Dybantsa have to do for you in order to be like the number one prospect on your board? Is there any sort of way that you could see that happening?
Oh, absolutely. Because from the very beginning of the process, he was right there with me. It's never been like someone is significantly lagging behind the other. I obviously, just like everyone else, have my order headed into it. But AJ was always a clear number one pick candidate. We talked about the explosive tools, the shot making, the multi-level shot making, the defensive tools that he has as well too. And I think like all of that stuff translates. We talk about the role, you want to see if he's going to be that two-way superstar. Even if he doesn't get to that two-way status, I do believe that this is kind of where combination of where the film, but really just understanding the player and intel comes in. Just how bad does he want to be a plus type defender? Where that's going to be, I'm gonna shut you down, or I'm going to be like this kind of stocks guy. But when I think about that type of stuff, I go back to someone like Ant Edwards, who
Mm,
physical tools to be an outstanding defender, at least a plus defender, defensive playmaker. And he admitted himself, he didn't play defense in college, really didn't feel like he needed to or really wanted to. And now and he says that as someone who's an ultimate competitor, as we know,
yeah.
who thinks he can beat everybody in anything and for good reason, and do anything on the basketball court. And now we're talking about, and the past couple of years, is one of the best two-way players in the league. All that physical tools was there, and just about finding that mindset. And I think it's a very similar thing with AJ. And if he does have that, I think that certainly helps him become more malleable, and he can really has a higher floor and more avenues to success. If the place, if the shot isn't falling, or if the play style just isn't clicking for whatever reason.
I love that. All right, so Jam, let's transition from a player who everybody knew coming into this draft class cycle to a player who I didn't really know anything about. A lot of people, not a lot of discussion. Apparently, even a lot of D1 schools didn't know a whole heck of a lot of about. That's going to be Keaton Wagler, the freshman wing out of
Yeah.
Illinois, 6'6", 185 pounds listed. Just like a lot of the other freshmen in this class, he's going to be freshly 19 come draft night if he was going to come out this year. So uh, another another reason for people to kind of fall in love with him, that being the age at his size. This week, Jam, he played against Ohio State and Nebraska, two really good programs, I would say, within the basketball world. He averaged 21 points in those games, 7.5 assists, 1.5 rebounds, and a half a block and a half a steal per game. Jam, in those two games, 50% from the floor, 54% from deep, and 92% from the free throw line. Jam, we've talked about Keaton Wagler. He's a player who kind of early on in the cycle, as soon as I watched the game, I was like, ooh, okay. Like he reminds me of a young, like kind of a younger Shaden Sharp in terms of the build, the energy, and stuff like that. I was hitting up a few people trying to figure out, hey, what do you know about this guy? And anyone that I reached out to, and we have some widespread tentacles here at No Ceilings, but kind of a lot of, yeah, he's okay. We'll see. It's early. He's going up against some no-name competitions. Jam, as the season has progressed, he has not shied away from the higher levels of competition. You and I have talked about him on the show, I want to say 2-3 weeks ago. I feel like this is a perfect touch point to talk about somebody like this, Jam, because I feel like he's kind of the poster child of this year's freshmen that are kind of surprising, with guys like Amari Allen and, Tyler Tanner, that next wave of freshmen. What have you thought about Keaton Wagler since the last time you and I spoke about him here on the show?
I really do like Wagler a lot. Before we kind of get into it, I would say every time you mention Shaden Sharp with him, it scares me. I can't lie.
Yeah,
I know it's more so because you talk about the energy and what was the other
just kind of.
aspect?
Yeah, the length, the size when he was younger, just like kind of structurally, he reminds me
Okay.
of watching Shaden Sharp too. And this was when he was rebounding more than he was
Yeah,
scoring and assisting as well. So he's adding some other stuff. I believe some people in No Ceilings are like, is this who Will Richard was supposed to be? Jam, am I off base by saying there's some Kaishawn George to his game a little bit as well? I feel like he's like
I like that.
I think he's a blend of what a lot of these like kind of young wingy, we don't really know what their skill is, but there's clearly something there type of a player.
Yeah, and it's like the coveted stuff too, right? It's the
Yeah.
pass, dribble, shoot skill set, and he's been showing that early and often. And really, within the past, I guess since season start, maybe month and a half, he's really established himself as the best prospect on this Illinois team.
That's
And
saying a
he
lot too.
yeah, it really is, and I feel like he's done that pretty quickly, and not only within that process, he's earned the trust of the coach Brad Underwood as well. We saw that was evident in the games, especially the games this past week as well,
Mhm.
and the game against, Nebraska. He has the ball late in the game, really when they need it, and it's winning time, it's crunch time, it's about 20, 25 seconds left. The ball is in his hands. They're running pick and roll. It's like, hey, we need you to make a play. He makes the right read, pick and pop with the V6, and he buries the three, and that ties the game up, and they end up obviously losing the game on the last second three.
Yep.
But it was him that they trusted late, and he was also the one in that first half that brought them back. It was him delivering big threes. It was a pick and roll three that he hit in that first half, a deep three showing off that range, being able to play pick and roll and make plays for guys and be connective as well too. So just I just love what he's brought. He's unafraid, earning the trust of the coaches, the teammates, and coming up big, in that pass dribble shoot skill set. One of the things I did want to talk to you about with him
Sure.
was just the offensive upside as a scorer. I like the herky jerky type of game that he has, but it's not a lot of like I'm gonna really create paint touches on my own. It's more about like I'm going to run pick and rolls. I'm gonna go to my signature spin move that he loves to go to as
Yep.
well too. But I do like that he is comfortable running pick and rolls. That he will be physical as well, despite the wiry frame. But do you see a lot of on ball upside with him, or just more kind of like a connective score and offensive type of player?
I think that if I kind of had to, this is the beautiful part, right? I think of scouting Keaton right now is like as soon as you think you got him figured out, he's like, no, I'm going to be good at this next thing. So, and it's not even mid December yet, Jam. So it's like, I'm not necessarily comfortable like capping anything with him this season
Of course.
because I was like, okay, he's kind of a neat sort of rebounder, connecting wing player who makes smart decisions. Now the three-point shooting is really kind of kicking off at a high clip. He's not only handling the ball jam, but defensively, he's defending point guards too, which I'm like, wow, okay, so you have good footwork, you have good length, you understand positioning and communication on the defensive end. I don't really have like a comfort level right now of like you are going to be this sort of player moving forward. But Jam, I think that the offensive scoring role is it's interesting because I think at a minimum right now at 6'6", somewhere in that neighborhood with room to grow, literally on his frame right now because he looks like a freshman player out there.
Yeah.
I think that at a minimum, you have a floor spacer who you trust to make these like secondary, tertiary playmaking advantages, that second side creation where the defense is in a scramble. You got to worry about the 3-point shot. And also with him driving and kicking and even finishing, like he is not a player who in the games that I watched, with his 57 free throw rate, which is insane at his size, that's he is putting pressure on the rim to Jam. So he's a guy that understands how to use his body, and I think that he's kind of underrated as an athlete because he's not, like, explosive, but he's got good stride, good stop-start game, and good understanding of how to use his length to create separation. He's got a lot of fun stuff on the offensive end that a month ago when I was saying he's got some shade and sharp to him, I wasn't expecting him to be all of a sudden, putting up 10 assist games and, this early on. So it's interesting because I don't necessarily know what the high end on the offensive end is
Mhm.
because he's just kind of growing these new skills as the season is progressing. But I think at a minimum, you have a good floor spacer with good handle and passing ability on that side. And something that I mentioned on the night shift last night, Jam, was that people are almost kind of getting into a like off with him where it's like, well, I like him more and I have him ranked this high now, and
Yeah,
I love him. And Dirty Dancer in the comment says, we don't think Keaton is actually entering the draft. And I think that
I
he
think there's a
obviously means
chance.
this year. I don't know. Like if he goes from November to December and the December to January looks a lot like the November to December, I'm not ruling
Mhm.
anything out. There's still some obvious concerns though, Jam. Like if we're removing the infatuation that I have from him, like if I have to speak as a scout, which I feel like I should here on our show, the strength thing is going to bear its ugly horns at some point. It hasn't done it yet, surprisingly, in college, but it's going to at the next level. As good of a shooter as he is, and as good as an offensive rebounder as he is, there's still some physicality stuff that I worry about translating at the next level. The rebounding has gone down over the past few weeks while the assists have gone up. The defensive playmaking numbers aren't really there, even though he is giving a lot of effort, especially being able to defend smaller, quicker players, which I think helps at his size. I think that's very important for him to be able to do that. 0 dunks this year. Again, speaking to that lack of explosiveness that he has right now, which I think is purely just strength related. I don't think that it's going to be something that's always going to be there because he knows how he's slippery. He knows how to poke and prod his way into the paint. There's just some things that I'm seeing that's like, okay, defensively, I feel like you still got a little bit of a ways to go. You could be a little bit better rebounding holistically, but it all coming down to strength, Jam, you're not gonna get to see that this season, unfortunately. Like, you're only gonna be able to get so much stronger, throughout a season where you run for a living, right? Like, that's gonna be off-season work assigned to him. So, those are kinda my concerns, Jam. What say you?
Yeah, absolutely. The strength is certainly the biggest, I would at least right now, the biggest kind of concern. Usually those type of builds, the long kind of wiry frames and strength just in general, once you hit a NBA weight room, even if you don't and strength and conditioning program, even if you don't get like jacked, we're not talking about like a Giannis type of
Yeah.
transformation, you still are able to add mature muscle and functional strength. Someone like Kevin Durant, who never got Herculean big or anything like
Yeah.
that, but he
Brandon
it,
Ingram.
Exactly. Is
Yeah.
tone, there's mature muscle, there's cut, there's definition, and most importantly, there's functional strength. And that's kind of the hope that Wagler will be able to continue to add that. And then just within that, I want to just continue to see him being physical. And as I mentioned on drives, like he will look to hit first, especially when he wants to get to the spin move and things like that. And then defensively, a play that really stood out to me that kind of really just illustrated and spoke to his, I guess, what will be a potential strength kind of deficit, but him willing to battle through that. There was a play where he gets switched on to what's that's the big is it the big man that with Nebraska, the stretch big,
Oh, Mast?
Master
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
On Mash, he's more of a stretch guy, but still he's giving up. He has at least what 5-6 inches on Wagler as well too, and significant weight advantage as well too. But he gets to switch on him, and Mast is trying to seal him in the lane. Wagler is battling. He eventually didn't necessarily push him out, but he battles him enough to where like the Mask can't get the ball. He has to get out of the lane to avoid 3 seconds. And then he's battling him again once he gets the ball right there on the block. And he keeps doing this until Avicii can come over and get the block. So I love the way
Yeah.
that he's stuck in there, giving up a significant strength and size advantage, and he's able to hold up and battle and willing to do this until he can get some help. So those are the type of things I want to continue to see. And obviously don't want to pick too much on mistakes, defensive mistakes that's gonna lapses are gonna happen. But one thing that I did have to point out though late in that game, it was a handoff play. I'm sure you saw it, and he just
Yep.
got stuck there on the screen. And he
Mhm.
did honestly, then like he tried to get back. Like he just kind of gave a haphazard effort to get back, and he did kind of make up for it by drilling a movement three the next possession later. But
Yep.
I do want to continue to see him stick in there defensively and battle, and I think that's all you really can ask for.
Yeah, and I think too, just some quick numbers to speak to some of the things that I think that he's doing fantastic. He's shooting around 39% from deep, Jam, on about 9 attempts per 100 possessions. He's hitting 44.4% of his dribble jumper threes, just kind of
Mm,
giving numbers to what you just spoke to just a second ago. 36.1% on the catch and shoot. He's in the 78th percentile right now in all offensive scoring possessions. When you include assist, Jam, he's in the 95th percentile, speaking to the playmaking, speaking to the vision, the ball handling, the slippery nature to his game, drawing in those extra defenders, and then knowing where his teammates are. He's got not 39 possessions in spot ups, 35 as a pick and roll ball handler, which for a guy who was under recruited, for a guy who's starting for a program with high end aspirations, they're diversifying him off of the point guards, off of the other playmakers that are on this team. I just think that you would do yourself as a fan and an evaluator both if you were looking to cap what Keaton Wagler could be when everything hits, just because the size, the feel, the fact that he is a little bit undersized, but he doesn't play afraid at all on both ends of the floor. Like there's really, no ceiling on how good of a player
well
uh
played.
yeah, there we go. Yep. But is there anything else that you want to add to Wagler before we move on, Jam?
Just as you mentioned and we really highlighted, but just want to re-emphasize that like I'm a big fan of the feel and playmaking.
Yes.
There's legitimate stuff there. It may not be as that like primary playmaker. It's more so as you mentioned, operating as a secondary playmaker, being able to attack the second side, spot ups and those type of things. In the Ohio State game, he had a nice closeout in the baseline and somehow just stuck it in between with the offhand and a nice little drop off pass in traffic. I didn't get the assist, but he does so many things like that. And as you mentioned, the go-to spin move, he had a play where he goes spin in the middle of the floor, finds Boswell on the baseline for a layup. So
Yep.
I just really do like the feel and the playmaking. And you're really gonna sell me when you. I wish you was more like 6'7", 6'8". There you go for everybody in the chat, and listening. But I wish he had more of that prototypical wing size that I like, because if that was the case, good God, like I would be
Yeah.
probably irrationally high on him. Like for sure, lotto guy. If you're talking about a guy at like 6'7", 6'8", as opposed to 6'5". So that's kind of really
Barely
what.
18, man. Like he
Yeah,
could keep
yeah,
growing.
yeah. He certainly could, and so and that's what the exciting part about everything with Wagner. He's a guy who wasn't expected to be on the radar right now, as you let off with the top of our discussion about him with this, and he has really emerged as not only the best prospect in Illinois, but for me, a real potential lottery top 20 type of guy.
I love it. All right, so what we're gonna do now, Jam, is we're gonna hit this quick break, and we'll be back to talk about our third prospect, and after him, we'll get into the sicko section for all you sickos out there. So hang tight. We'll hit this break, and we'll be right back. All right, we are back here on the No Ceilings NBA Draft Show here on the No Ceilings NBA YouTube channel. We're also on your podcast player of choice. Jam and I, my co-host Jam Boozer, and we have been talking a little bit about some of the more headline prospects. We led off the show talking about AJ Dybantsa, talked about his performance over the week. Jam made his case on why AJ could still be climbing up boards, even though he is a consensus top 3 prospect. We talked about my beloved Keaton Wagler. Yes, I'm taking credit for him as being one of my guys, and how you really shouldn't be putting no ceilings on our guy, Keaton Wagler. And now, Jam, we are back to talk about a player who I think, to steal a phrase that Corey Tulaba uses on his show all the time, I think this next prospect totally embodies like the NBA draft community's debate of being a man of science versus a man of faith. And that's going to be Braden Smith, the senior guard out of Purdue, who is 6 foot, a clean 6 foot, squeaky clean 6 foot, 170 pounds, will be 23 years old on draft night. Did you know, Jam, that Braden Smith and I were both born in the same city in Arkansas, that being Russellville, Arkansas?
Oh, shout out Russellville, Arkansas. We're talking about two legends of the city right now.
Well, yes, Corliss Williamson and Braden Smith. I guess also if you want to include a third legend, you can put me in there as
The
well.
big three.
The big 3. Put us 3 on any court, and if Braden Smith scores 20, Corliss Williamson scores 20, we will all 3 combine for 40 points in a game. So, all right, all right. So, Jam, we're gonna talk about your guy Braden Smith here, who this week played against Minnesota and Marquette, averaged 11 points per game, 11 assists per game, 5.5 boards, 3.5 steals, 1 block for a 6-footer over those 2 games, and has shooting splits of 53, 50, weirdly 60 from the free throw line. Jam, you wanted to talk about Braden Smith, so I'm going to give the keys over to you, brother. Which way do you want to take this?
I guess I want to kind of get to an overview of just kind of his draft projection. We can kind of get into his game, because I was actually, little inside baseball here, but I wanted to text you about him, but I was like, let me just save this conversation,
Oh, here we
for the
go.
pod. But for me, my reason for bringing up Braden Smith is because he's just been so incredibly productive year after year. One of the most productive and steady point guards in the country. For me, a part of his comp blend is Tyus Jones. And I like Tyus a
I
good
see that.
amount. A good amount. You're talking about 2 undersized guards who excel as facilitators, operating pick and rolls, getting to the pull-up game, whether that's, the mid-range game or from 3 as well, and also project to be backup point guards, defensive playmaking stuff there as well too. So I really like Tyus coming out. I thought he could potentially be one of the better backup point guards in the league, which he ended up being for a few years. So, and I think they have similar games. So I was just thinking, like, why was I so high on Tyus? I gave him some of a part of me giving. I gave him a late first round grade, but I thought he was lottery
Oh, okay.
worthy. I thought he was lottery worthy considering um, the strength or lack thereof strength in that class at that time. But even with that, I was trying to figure out why am I lower on a guy like Braden Smith who has multiple years of production as I was for Tyus. And that's kind of the things that I was trying to figure out and just kind of a little more context to it going into the year. I had Braden, I believe, like in the 40s or something like that. And he is someone that's going to rise for me and, probably be in that late third, mid 30 range, but definitely a late first round grade as opposed to the mid second. Should I be moving him up or just, I guess, really, how do you feel about him? And, if am I missing something or where are you with him?
I'm probably the wrong person to talk about moving
No, you're
him
the
up.
right person.
I well, so I think this week is an interesting week to talk about him because he's not putting up one of these ridiculous 30-point outings with 15 assists and 6 rebounds and 50, 50, 90 performances or anything like that. I think that he's had, by his standards, he had a pretty pedestrian week. And I say that as he's combined for uh 11 points per game and 11 assists per game. Okay. So like I
15 and 12 against Minnesota.
12 against Minnesota, which again speaks to how productive he is if this is
Mhm.
pedestrian, right? Assist percentage of 44.8, that's fifth in college, right? And there's some minutes percentage stuff that I could jiggle around if I wanted to get him higher. I just left it at face value.
Yep.
3.2 assist to turnover percentage. He's shooting almost 43% from deep on over 8 attempts per 100 possessions. He's hitting less than 36% on dribble jumpers, jam, and 53 on catch and shoot. So the inside shooting has me a little bit worried, right? Both with the frequency, like mainly the frequency, if I can be honest. And he's 6 foot, he's sub 180 pounds. The list of NBA players that are below that threshold, like essentially, he's a filter guy. If I could, if that makes sense, right? Like you hit enough threshold filters on what median outcomes are for players. And Braden, unfortunately, just by not even looking at film, he can run into one of these filters and it makes it really hard. He is kind of slight, he is older, but he knows how to play. And I wrestle so much with him on, I speak to some skills trainers, and the number one thing about guards that I keep hearing about, like, whether or not they're gonna translate to the next level is they really have to clear these 2 things. 1, can they guard 94 feet or 94 feet? Can they guard the length of the floor, right? Um, I think that he can. I think that the defensive metrics speak to that, and I think the film does too. He's actually pretty athletic too, and he is very shifty, very quick. And then can you handle the ball against pressure? Obviously, Braden Smith has shown that he can do that. So I wrestle with the analytical side of me that says 6 foot, 174 or 170 pounds. He's old, very jump shot reliant, does pass very well, but is going to get picked on defensively and is not really going to apply a lot of pressure on the paint at the next level. And then I think that he can defend the full length of the floor, and I think that he can handle the ball against pressure. So I kinda have him in, like, that mid to late second round range because at some point, you just wanna draft people who know how to play the game and who can do good things on the floor, so that's kind of where I am with Braden. But if I'm spend I don't wanna spend a first round pick on him, and then I guess team dependent, I might be okay with, like, that early to mid second round range, depending on which team I am, but in a vacuum, I don't necessarily feel comfortable spending real draft equity on a 23-year-old guy who is listed at 6 foot, probably not, and is listed at 170 pounds. Like I wrestle with both of those things kind of existing at the same time.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Let me maybe try to phrase it this way and get your thoughts on this. This maybe kind of strays away from Smith as well, but you're still within in that realm if you have someone else in mind. But if you project for him like I do to be a backup point guard, what is essentially your threshold and kind of like draft capital and value for a what you believe could be a high level backup point guard? Like, how do you value that? Is that late first? Is that still too early for you? Or if you're talking about you're going to get somebody who can be a championship backup level point guard fit anywhere. I'm not saying that Braden's going to be that, but
Sure.
that's just the type of profile that I feel like he needs to have, where he can be one of the better backup point guards. If you have someone like that, where are you looking to take that person?
Again, it's going to depend on the team, right? Like I think
Yeah.
the last mock draft that we did with the Lakers, they had when we had them take Amari Allen over at
Mhm.
noceilingsnba.com. Please go check that out. I think that was like the 25th or 26th pick. Let's say Amari Allen isn't available at that spot, albeit whether that be due to his production or whether that be him deciding to come back, right? Do you feel comfortable if you're the Lakers taking him in that like mid 20s round range jam?
Amari Allen or Braden?
Braden.
Oh, and speak as a Lakers and
Yeah.
Wizards fan, but Lakers fans here, no. There's
Okay.
no way. I would not be excited about that. But to your point before, if it's on that mid second round, then I'm much more for it.
Exactly, and that's kind of where
Yeah,
I'm at too, but if I'm the Oklahoma City Thunder and I have 5 first-round picks and I feel pretty
yeah,
secure with my rotation and I just wanna add someone who the Thunder, they draft people is what, Coach Presti, wow, the general manager of
sure, he
Presti,
could do it too, man. That guy is a absolute basketball genius.
I wouldn't put it past him,
Yeah,
but I could see the Thunder drafting him after they get, they throw their several darts on the board and late first round pick. They're like, hey, let's just pick him up because we want him to run the blue or whatever the case may be, right? Yeah. I
yeah,
feel like the Thunder could draft him. I could see the Celtics spending, the second round pick on
mhm.
on Braden too, depending on what they want to do with like their kind of glut of guards. It really just I hate to say it, it depends, and just
No, it does.
in a vacuum, I would wanna put him in that mid to late second round range just comparatively right now against everyone who we know, but if I have him there now and I know that a lot of the freshmen and sophomores and players like that are in front of him are gonna withdraw, I'm not gonna raise the stink if you go ahead and put him in that, like, late second to early or excuse me, that late first to early second round range
Mhm.
now because you kind of prognosticate that that's what's gonna end up happening anyway with the players who you project to withdraw and things like that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it definitely does, and I think that's great perspective, so I appreciate that. And it's also I know we're having a little bit of a philosophy conversation, which is great, we always love that. And it's
Sure.
also about, like, you don't want to sacrifice swinging up for upside, finding that balance, like, if you can find a Braden Smith, a floor general, backup floor general, you don't want to go ahead and take them too high when you can go ahead and get him maybe as an undrafted free agent, second round, or you won't feel, crushed if you missed out on him, as opposed to if you feel like you really should have taken a swing on someone with better tools that you felt really, really good about, or maybe just a better profile that you like.
And I think that what you just mentioned, I don't that could have maybe even been a throwaway kinda nugget for you there, Jim, but I wanna anchor on it. The undrafted free agent route, I think that if he's not a first round guy, if you look at the kind of the trend of the guards who have just been like, "Hey, don't draft me. I wanna go to a place where I know I'm gonna get playing
Yep.
time." Like, we just saw it with Nemhart. We've seen it with a guy like Austin Reeves. I would not be surprised if Braden Smith is like, "Hey, listen, I understand I have limitations, but there's gonna be a team that needs, some guard depth. There's gonna be a team that is gonna love me, and I want to go there. I don't wanna kinda leave it up to the fate of, a team having these philosophical discussions that you and I are having, Jam. He might be that sort of a player where it comes down to the agency calling him like, "Hey, don't draft. We wanna go here. Please don't draft," things like that, where he goes and gets a guaranteed contract for more years than he could as a second round prospect, things like that. There's a lot of kind of like intricacies when it comes to once you hit second round territory, like all bets are
It's a
off.
little
It's not
wild, yeah.
it gets a little wild. Sometimes it doesn't even come down to the talent, right? Like
Yeah.
sometimes it has to do a lot with like wanting to control where you end up going. And I feel like a guy like Braden Smith could be a prospect like that.
Yeah, I absolutely love that, and I don't think there is a big it isn't poo-pooed on if you are not drafted anymore. You know what I mean? Like, especially when you have agents and you are kind of dictating where you want to go, the most advantageous spot for you, the best fit for you to not be able just to worry about your first contract, but be able to get that second contract and that opportunity to get there.
Absolutely. All right, so Jam, let's go ahead and hit this break. And then on the other side of it, you sickos who are watching and listening, we have a few names for you. Jam brought one really awesome name to the table who Jam, before I even prepared for the show, I didn't know he was playing tonight, the night that we're recording this. I think he just dropped 20 on the night that we're recording this too. Obviously, I haven't seen that tape, but had a big game. And then a guy who I'm bringing to the table is a sort of a familiar name for sickos out there, but another name just to kind of talk about how he's doing this season. We'll discuss those two guys right after this break. All right, we are back here on the No Ceilings NBA Draft Show. Here on the No Ceilings NBA YouTube channel, we're also on your podcast player of choice. Jam and I have been discussing players who have stood out to us this week that we wanted to talk about on this week's show. We opened up with potential, I'm going to go ahead and say it, Jam, potential number one pick in the 2026
There we go.
and so let's be one of the only shows that actually says that. We're gonna do away with the top three consensus pick. What potential number one pick, AJ Dybantsa. We talked about him here on the show. We talked about Keaton Wagler, the number one prospect in my heart, and Braden Smith, a player who I share a birth city with. So a very fun show. And we've reached a part of the show, Jam, where we get to let our hair down. We get to talk about some guys who, yeah, who a lot of people may not know about. And I love doing this. This is my favorite part of the show. Jam, I want to give it to you because as you have continued to do since you have been on Draft Sickos with me, you you make this show so much better because you truly do bring players that is I pride myself on looking for unknown and unheralded players, and this is the second or third time that you're like, "Hey, let's talk about this other prospect that you don't know anything about, Steven." I'm like, "Great, that sounds awesome." So, Jam, I'm actually gonna give it over to you to even introduce them because I'm probably gonna mess up the last name, so I'm gonna turn it over to you, brother.
No, I appreciate that. That's what it's about. Iron sharpen iron. And I'm always trying to get you, see if I can get a prospect Steve may hasn't never heard of or may haven't seen too much of quite yet. But I very rarely do I can find a prospect that fits that type of billing. But Jackson Rasmussen, he is the highest ranked player in the state of Idaho, staying home. Really first caught my attention playing a Utah prep alongside AJ Dybantsa, who we discussed, and obviously everyone in draft community knows, and also JJ Mandequit, who's also at Washington. So being able to play around two high-level guys, and he really stood out playing with them, being a nice connecting piece as a shooter and just a gritty player as well too. And to see him perform at Utah Prep, I was like, man, absolutely, this is a must-track prospect. Always love when that's happened. I think I have one. This could be a sleeper to watch long term. And he has not disappointed starting the year so far, And what I've been really, really happy for him is just a combination of projectable frame, and I know you're going to really get to his frame too, but just a strong frame, broad shoulders, long arms, some mature muscle. So he has that physical frame that you like and projectability with it, and the production at 14.9 points per game, 4.1 rebounds, assist and a half, and zero point 0.5 stocks per game, which I wish there was obviously a little bit more with that
Sure.
with his defensive playmaking. But he's also shooting 35% from three on 2.8 attempts per game. And the big game that he had really against Notre Dame, that's more of the standout game. He
Yep.
did have a big game, as you mentioned today, against Evergreen State. 20 points, 5 rebounds, and a block, an efficient 7 for 9, 2 of 4 from 3, as well, 2 4 4 from the line. But that Notre Dame game as well, I was very encouraged to see that he did not back down from the physicality. He looked to dish it out. Like, he was able to score in the post. He looked to post guys up, went to with the go-to jump hook. It's probably one of his better post moves. Was able to step out and stretch the floor. Nice closeout attack on a spin finish. So I really did I like with him. And then anytime you have a prospect who's not in that power four, stepping up and having a good showing, not just production wise, but being able to match that physicality, the strength, and a little bit outmatched athleticism, athletic wise to an extent. But I do like some of the runway athleticism that he does have. Did you like what you saw from him so far?
Yeah, I liked him, man. I even texted you after you mentioned, or after I started watching him after you mentioned. I was like, "Oh, dude!" Like immediately, one of my favorite things that I like to do, and one of my favorite things that I'll say when I'm watching like a mid or low major game, and there's a clear talent on the floor. I'm like, Jackson Rasmussen is the prospect who looks like he's the NBA prospect on the floor. You know what I mean? Like your eyes,
Love it.
well, you can look, you'll be looking at 10 players and you'll say, that has to be Jackson Rasmussen without knowing anything about him. You mentioned, the squared shoulders, the long arms, the frame looks like it's going to carry very well as he continues to get older. He is a little bit older as a freshman. Let's
Mhm.
just say all things hit the right way and he enters the 2026 NBA draft, he'll be 20 years old. Now, this would be the class to be a 20-year-old freshman because he's not unique in that nature, right? So he's in keeping with guys like Michael Brown Jr., players like that, right? You mentioned the Notre Dame game. He dropped 16 points, 4 boards, 2 assists, and a steal. He scored 41% from the floor, 50% from deep. So that kind of lets you know about what his play style is right now as a young, growing freshman. Um, has only had 2 games all season long, Jam, where he was in less than double figure scoring. If you look on Bartorvik, he only has 1 red category, and that's his steals percentage at being .7. Free throw free throw rate of 50, which even though he's a little bit slighter and he struggles to score in the paint, he's not afraid to get in there and mix it up and draw fouls. He has a true shooting percentage of 59, which is awesome. 2-point percentage of 58.3. Per synergy, he ranks in the 74th percentile in all scoring possessions. He still has a ways to grow as a connective playmaker, but as a guy who's just going to end possessions, you can do a heck of a lot worse than a guy who's listed at Idaho as a freshman forward at 6'7", 200 pounds. Like he's got a good projectable frame on him, Jam, as you like to say. He's in the 66th percentile in spot up shooting, 37% on catch and shoot threes. He's in the 70th percentile scoring at the basket and in the 64th percentile in at rim frequency. So, and again, using that frame, using that length, he's in the 77th percentile in non dunk finishes. Now, the defense has a little bit of a ways to go, but Jam, you talked about some of the scoring tendencies that he have. I love the when he goes to a post up and then he does
Mhm.
the turnaround fade. He covers so much ground on that shot, and the release is so pretty. So that was something that was the first play that I watched of him, and I was like, "Oh, wow, like, there could be something legitimate
Yep.
here with his game." That's like that turnaround fadeaway that he hit in that Notre Dame game, that is a professional scorer shot, like, by footwork, by floor spacing, the high release, all of that. So, I really enjoyed watching, Jackson Rasmussen, and I appreciate you bringing him to our attention here. And Jam, we'll transition next. Or did you have anything else that you wanted to add to Jackson?
Just last thing, one thing I want to
Yeah.
figure out with him, I think he is, although he is 6'7", more of a wing. I think he's more of a stretch forward than he is like a three and more of a wing. So I do want to see those ball skills continue to evolve. But right now, he's much more of a stretch four, stretch big. Did you see something similar, or are you more confident or optimistic about him being able to play the three?
I like him as a 3 potential. I
Okay.
think he could be kind of like a tweener 3-4. I think the shot's really
Yeah.
gonna be there. He's gotta put in some work, and again, like, being at Idaho, the pressure is gonna be low for him to come in and just, like, be a one and done or anything like that, so, I think in the offseason, if I was advising him, it would be ball handling and playmaking would be the
Yep.
next thing that I would look to add to him offensively. He's got the size to be a heck of a versatile defender as well, and he doesn't move poorly either. I think that upon first glance, some people might look at him and be like, he's probably going to be a poor mover. Again, I think that post fade, 2 steps and he has covered so much ground. He's a lot more quick and nimble than I think that most people would expect. I think that that footwork could translate to the defensive end. It's really just going to require a lot of, reps and coaching and offseason work. But I think the handle is good enough right now for him to get to his spots comfortably. And I feel like if you can do that, there is some room to grow as a handler in other areas as well. So I'm optimistic. I think that he can kind of like tween, but really the 2 through 4 if everything goes right, Jam.
Okay. Yeah, that's something I will continue to look for, especially defensively and for guys who are more going to be like stretch players. For me, I kind of look at maybe the Sam Hauser type of effect,
Yeah.
where if you can shoot and you can
Sam
space, I
Merrill,
don't
maybe. Yeah.
yeah, I don't see him as like that level shooter of those type of guys. But when you have size and shooting, can you just do enough with your tools to hold up defensively? Whether that's one-on-one situation as a team defender. So that's something I want to be looking forward to him for the rest of the year.
Yeah, and Norrin Rad in the chat says he is not liking the stocks on this Rasmussen. Yeah,
Me either.
yeah, it's the defense is not
Not
where you
great.
want it to be. Yeah,
Yeah.
we're looking probably Jam like if we're sipping truth serum here, it's probably a 4-year college guy, right? Like that's kind of like what we're looking at. But again, we're in the SIGO
Yeah,
section, guys. Like we're
exactly.
we're not expecting these guys to come in and be, one and dones at this point of the show. All right. So Jam, we're going to transition now from Jackson Rasmussen to talk about a guy who no stranger to the show. We talked about him in the offseason. I feel like we might have mentioned him 1 or 2 times in the early going, but this is the first time in a while, Jam, that you and I have talked about Rowan Brumbaugh here on the show. Redshirt junior guard out of Tulane, listed at 6'4", 185 pounds. He will be 22 years old this upcoming draft. Jam, the last game that I saw that he played, I'm gonna try to pronounce this school. It's Tougaloo, is who they
I
played this year.
yeah, that was my best guess too. I've never heard of the school, and we watch a lot of college basketball on all different levels, and
Yeah.
so like it's always fun to run across a school that you've never even heard of, and this was definitely one of them.
Yeah, I'm like, "Is this a D2? Like, what's going on here? I've never heard of Tougaloo before. Interesting." I wanna look up their mascot. That's gonna be the next step. Maybe we can
They
get
try
some
to be
swag for
a buffalo or a walrus or something like that. I don't know why that stands out for me for as a
it's gotta be
mascot for them.
an obscure one. I like the walrus shout. I'm thinking kind of
Woolly
like
mammoth.
a flamingo maybe, like, that would be
Yeah.
cool. The Tougaloo Flamingos or something. I could see it. But, against the we're gonna call them the Flamingos. I'm just having fun here. Obviously, that's probably not their name. They're probably like the Wildcats or something,
Yeah, the
right?
Bears.
The Bears, yeah, but, Rowan against, Tougaloo dropped 22 points, 7 boards, 6 assists, 3 steals, shooting splits of 64, 50, and 100% from the line. Jam, obviously, he had a great game against the Flamingos here, but Rowan has been a guy who we had high expectations of, at this level, before the season even started. I wanted to touch base with you on him just at this point of the season, Jam, to see how he's kind of performed relative to your kind of preseason expectations for him.
Yeah, just real quick, shout out to Tougaloo. They are a HBCU in Mississippi. I had no idea. So count
Okay,
that you learn something new every day. So I
there we
love
go.
that. Yeah. But yeah, Rowan, he's really been right. Maybe slightly exceeding expectations, but has not been anywhere close to a disappointment this year.
Sure.
Maybe I wish, the Tulane team as a whole was a little bit better, because they've had talent there the past couple years with Cam Williams and Caleb Banks there with them too. But I just really love what I'm seeing from him is once again, He is being able to show that he can be a reliable shooter, being able to stretch the floor, play off of spot ups, and also run pick and roll, be the point guard, the facilitator, play in the pocket as well. So I really do love just the consistency that he's been showing. And then very similar to, Braden Smith, this is a guy who, if he does get to the NBA and has some staying power there, it is going to be as a backup guard, maybe that second or third guard that can orchestrate offense and space the floor. And for me, I do worry about some of the rim finishing at and around the rim, even against the game that he had a couple days ago against why am I was it UT San Diego? Was that UC San Diego, I believe it was?
Maybe I can't remember off the top.
Yeah, it was UC San Diego.
There you go.
He just had and that's not a team that has NBA athletes, especially at the bigs once you get in the paint. And he had some struggles finishing at and around the rim. So that's something I'm concerned about long term for sure. Especially when you have some troubles against a team that doesn't have NBA athletes like that. But overall, he continues to show the things that I do want to see. He's lining up. I think he's a junior, but I think he's like 21, but he is lining up
Red shirt, yeah.
red shirt to line up to be a potential Portsmouth guy if he does leave this year, which I know you and I both would be ecstatic about. But he's going to continuously get looks, and he definitely deserves those looks. And shout out to his continued development. I got a chance to see him 2 years ago, so many times in person when he was at Georgetown, and he
Yep.
started to really turn the corner, find his confidence. And they got a chance to see him live again once Tulane came here and played George Mason, and I've just been continuously impressed by his growth and the way that he's really developed into a real legitimate NBA prospect.
Yeah, and if you look at what he's doing this year, he's got a free throw rate of 68.1, which he's outgrowing his conference right now, right? Where he's in the AAC. He was last year, he was the newcomer of the year, first team within that conference and everything. I think really just kind of establishing himself and growing more comfortable, understanding what the transfer market looked like last season. I kind of
Yeah.
mentioned it in the offseason jam. I think he's auditioning for his next college team this year is really, I think, the best
Ooh.
way that I could put that,
Ooh.
right? Where he is looking to see, because I mean, he redshirt junior after this year, he's got one more season left. Um, and in my opinion, if Yaxel wasn't happy with where he was projected to be drafted out of UAB last season to the point to where he had to go to Michigan and look like an NBA player playing in college basketball right now for him to get drafted in a range that he would be accepted, excited for. I think we're kind of seeing the same thing with Rowan this year. He might end up being, one of Florida's next point guards or something like that, or Duke's next lead guard, if all things hit right. But I just think the shooting, I kind of mentioned that in the offseason, he's like for Tulane, we have Bennett Sturts at home to where you feel like you're comfortable with his shooting, you're comfortable with his playmaking. His defensive metrics are not as bad as what I think some people might expect because he is such an offensive weapon. If you look, he's got 24 stocks to 28 fouls committed, so about dead even in terms of, defensive mistakes to defensive events created. I'm liking that. He's in the 35th percentile in at rim finishing, getting there in the 54th percentile. A decent bit of his volume actually comes at the rim. So I think that scouts, albeit college or long-term NBA or Europe, wherever he's going to end up going, you got to be excited for the fact that a good portion of his shot diet is coming at the rim because we know that he can shoot, we know that he can pass. He's just growing more as a well-rounded player this season, Jam. And I think that that's been the most exciting thing for me is watching him kind of diversify that offensive skill set.
Yeah, and that's going to be huge for him. He's going to be an offensively tilted, offensive oriented, however you want to kind of categorize it, player at the next level. The defensive playmaking stuff is good. I love the instincts in the passing lane, some of the quick hands, but it's going to come down to his ability to space the floor when he's off the ball and to be able to competently run pick and rolls as a facilitator and playmaker for others and as a scorer as well too. I mean, I'm so glad you brought up him potentially, transferring and kind of having this 2 year stint in Tulane and leaving. And you're right, this is last year. It could be time to go get back to a Power Four conference and really test yourself. At the same time, I'm also like, you found your way at Tulane and you established yourself. It's like, do you leave that after you already bounced around a little bit? But at the end of the day, you have one shot there. You're at Tulane, who may not be a tournament team there for you, so he's gonna have some very interesting decisions to make when it comes to toward the end of the year. And I think, as you mentioned, a ton of suitors.
Absolutely. All right, so Jam, that's going to wrap up the show here tonight for the prospects we discussed. We discussed Rowan Brumbaugh. We discussed Jackson Rasmussen, Braden Smith. We talked about my guy Keaton Wagler and potential number one pick in the 2026 NBA draft, AJ Dybantsa. So fun slate that we were able to discuss. Jam, before we get into what we're going to be talking or what we're going to be working on, first off, everybody watching and listening, shout out to all of you guys. While you're here, please
Appreciate.
smash the like button, subscribe, rate, review, all that fun stuff. But please, at a minimum, the like button and the subscription goes a long way for what we're trying to do over here at No Ceilings. We're going to be recording this next week early. Jam, I believe you said Thursday is going to be the target date for
Yep.
this week because I'm going to be going on vacation. Those who know, I'm military. I have an opportunity to go to Arkansas for the first time in a few years, so I'm excited to go and see family.
Yeah.
So Jam has been kind enough to let us record early to kind of facilitate next week's episodes and things like that. And there might be some stuff kind of over the next, I would say, 2 shows that might be a little bit different. But just please bear with us. The holiday season is coming up. I promise, once we're in 2026, we're going to be running with that same crazy frenetic pace that you all have loved about us again. But Jam, what do you kind of have going on behind the scenes right now for No Ceilings, brother?
Yeah, so the recent stuff I've written was about Rodney Rice, who unfortunately is out with a shoulder injury, but had been playing very, very well at USC, adjusting to a new place and a new role, playing point guard there with a lot of success. And then also recapped Mayhem on Military, which is a top high school event here in the DMB. So recap that. And this week, really, I'm trying to decide. Like, I kind of like Steven last week, but I think right now what I'm planning to do for sure is essentially like a holiday wish list, if you will, for prospects. So I think that's kind of the route that I'm going to go for this week. So I'm looking forward to hashing that out and getting it out.
Yeah, man, we got to keep it topical here, and as we get close to the Christmas and holiday season. For myself, I just dropped. You'll have to forgive me. I had to do it on a Sunday this week, but typically they're on Saturdays. I dropped my sleeper prospects of the week. I had a couple of returning names, some returning names that have been honorable mentions that deserved a proper write up this time. So I'll give you one name for free here. Justin Pippen over at Cal. He has been kind of interesting to keep tabs on this season, Jam. And for anybody who hasn't really watched him, not a perfect prospect by any means. Am I suggesting that he's coming out this year? But down the line, Justin Pippen has some fun stuff to his game. And there's a few other prospects that I'm giving you nuggets on there. And then this upcoming Thursday, my dedicated like individual prospect that I'm writing on is going to be Keaton Wagler, who we talked about. So you're going to get a double dose of me talking about him this week. But this time you get to read it instead of listening. But shout out to the chat, everybody who's been in there. Norm Rad, Dirty Dancer, Antoine just pulled up.
Yep.
Antoine, always appreciate the support. The rest of y'all out there, of course, we love and appreciate y'all as well. But Jam, do you got anything else before we close out, brother?
Just, yeah, shout out to everyone in chat. We really appreciate, the support and just the community that we continue to build. And, thanks to y'all, it's just an incredible thing to be a part of such a huge draft community.
Absolutely. And then Antoine Willis, we'll answer this before we roll out of here.
Yeah.
Have you seen Marcus Spears Jr.? And if so, how do you feel about him? Jam, have you seen MSJ?
I have not seen tape this year. I have seen, summer EYBL stuff, but everything, the profile looks great, 6 foot, 8-ish wing, the athleticism, the budding shot, making a lot of really, really good stuff there. So I'm excited to really continue to dive into him. I have some high school tape that I'll be getting to this week and the next couple weeks.
Yeah, I actually watched him live when I went up to the overtime elite.
Yeah,
He was one of
yeah.
the prospects that was on display there. Very fascinating player. Plays for Jermaine O'Neal up in overtime elite. You know, the prolific coach as well. Very fun player. Very very fun. Has a lot of tools, a lot of potential. And I have words about him over at NoCeilingsNBA.com from when I saw him 3-ish weeks ago. So a lot of fun stuff there. But for my co-host Jam, for the rest of us here at No Ceilings NBA, we just want to thank you all so much for listening, and we will catch up with y'all next time. Much love, y'all.